What is going on, my friends, and welcome back to your morning market update. This is an update that we do just about 4 to 5 times every single week, in which I cover some pretty important news that's going on in the crypto world, as well as I give you guys some Bitcoin technical analysis, in which we talk about what's going on the charts and what we can expect over the next 24 to 48 hours from Bitcoin. So with that said, of course, let's go ahead and let's start right off with some news and things that I do believe are influencing the market and retail investors. So first and foremost, what I want to talk about is this piece of news that we got just about 8 hours ago, which said Bank of England's Cunliffe warns that crypto will see tough times as Federal Reserve tightens financial conditions. Now, I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like this guy's a little bit late to the party. But this has been an article I've been seeing shared around, pretty much all of Twitter, my Instagram. I saw it a couple times, and people are kind of getting concerned that as we do see Bitcoin possibly making this next leg down, that as we are getting more and more articles of this nature with some of these regulators and central bankers and people who are in these positions of power coming out to say that they see Bitcoin continuing to fall, they are under the belief that that could lead us to see what, 20, 15, $1,000, somewhere around that nature. So it says here that Sir John Cunliffe is the deputy governor for financial stability at the Bank of England. So this is kind of his job, to find stability and where's the risk on versus risk off assets, right? That he had a warning for investors on Tuesday. The Bank of England executive cautioned that crypto investors should expect more difficult times ahead. He explained that as the Federal Reserve and central banks around the world tighten financial conditions, investors will be more attracted to safer assets. The question in which he was replying to about whether interest rates would ramp up pressure on cryptocurrencies, he says that I think as the process continues, as quantitative tightening starts in the US, I think we'll see a move out of risky assets. Now, of course, that does come off the back of Federal Reserve Chairman Jay Powell saying last week that the Fed will continue tightening monetary policy until it sees clear and convincing evidence that inflation is falling to the target rate of 2%. Now, he said that there's also another factor affecting the crypto market, noting the Russia-Ukraine war is prompting investors to move funds into safer assets. So, although this is a new article again, and this is something a lot of people are talking about, I kind of feel like he's late to the party. Like, I feel like this is something we've all discussed and that we're all aware of, right? Now, the reason why I will say that this is important, though, is because I actually do agree. Now, a lot of people are calling all of these crazy bottoms, right? And they're just saying that, oh, well, the daily RSI was overextended and we saw we saw it bottom out. So for that reason, well, crypto just has to go back up. And that's just simply not true, right? I see all of these comparisons to 2020 and 2021, 2018, 2019, even 2013, some 2015, from a technical based perspective in which people are saying, well, we have to go back up to all-time highs right now, right? People are talking about the run flat, the expanded run flats, and all of these technical things. But realistically, we have to understand something is that until there is more education and more of an understanding of the capabilities of Bitcoin, crypto is still going to be considered a risk-on asset. And while people are taking their money out of risk-on assets, Bitcoin is going to continuously be affected not only by retail investors, but also by many of these large institutions as they are trying to de-risk on some of their investments. That's just how this market works. But I feel as if people who are just now talking about this are, again, a little bit late to the party. My overall opinion about this thing is that we are probably seeing a point in which the market has factored in what is happening in the world right now, right? Because one thing we have to understand is that markets react and they take advance, right? They will start to create this price and they will find the fair value price in reaction to certain news way before it is fully committed to happening, right? Way before we see it fully follow through. Now, what I mean by that is that the market prices things in well before they happen. The reason is, for example, if we see Ethereum say, hey, in 3 weeks, we're going to see that Ethereum is no longer going to work at the speed it's at. It's actually going to slow down by 30 times, and it's going to be somewhat useless. Do you know what's going to happen to Ethereum? It's going to crash. Why? Because the market begins to factor in that news, and there are reactions to the news of what people are expecting to happen, causing the price to move much sooner than the actual event itself. That's why people buy the rumor, sell the news, and do it vice versa. So what I'm personally under the belief is that the point in which we start to see inflation rates find a peak is going to be the point in which we start to see the bottom getting set in for Bitcoin. Realistically, one thing that we know is that as we did start to get all of these worries and all of these fears about inflation and the overall, quantitative tightening from the Federal Reserve, that really sent the prices of cryptos on this this death fall, right? Now, realistically, it's been more since April, but this has been like an all year thing in which we've seen this fall happening as the market is pricing in the overall removal of risk on assets from many portfolios of institutional investors and retail investors. So I'm under the belief that as we do start to see a peak, which should be relatively soon, that's going to be the point in which we start to find a bottoming out. And I'm not expecting that, although we are still going to be at 8% or something like that around probably the next interest rate hike, I'm not expecting that we need to continue to fall all the way until the point that we see the Federal Reserve push inflation down to 2%. This market moves well in advance of the actual current events. And in my opinion, I think we do find that bottom relatively soon. So for that reason, of course, this is always important to note. But one thing we do have to understand is that it's not like this market works hand in hand with news. No, it works in advance of news. It works ahead of news. And for that reason, I again don't believe it's going to take multiple months of us getting, or maybe even a year or two, to get down to 2% inflation before the market itself stops falling. I just personally don't see that. Now, a lot of people ask me whenever we talk about things of this nature, they ask me when we talk about crypto and Bitcoin, and they say, well, this is a hedge against inflation, right? It doesn't make sense if we call this a store of value and a hedge against inflation that it's falling right now just because inflation rates aren't doing well. And people are like, well, realistically, isn't this kind of counterproductive, a bit counterintuitive as to the fact that it's falling in a time where inflation is rising? And what I say to that is that I believe we are still in the early stages, one, but I believe, like I said earlier, that this is more due to a lack of education and understanding, especially from a foundational level of the capabilities of what Bitcoin is, before we can, even start to see it implemented into a system in which people will keep their money in it in a risk on time or risk off time, right? So one thing we can see is that we have been seeing some progression and some progress and some steps taken towards the initiative to educate people on these capabilities to get to that point one day, which is absolutely amazing. It says here that Bitcoin Argentina NGO to take crypto education to schools. Argentina is one of the countries with a high crypto adoption rate in Latin. According to numbers published by Chain Analysis, some citizens of the country have fled to crypto and Bitcoin due to inflation and exchange controls depleting buying power. This is why Bitcoin Argentina, an NGO dedicated to the expansion of the Bitcoin ecosystem in the country, has decided to launch an education project that will allow high schoolers to learn about Bitcoin. And this is extremely important because realistically, all of us have probably been through this before. When you try to say educate a 30-year-old or 40-year-old or even a 50-year-old, let's not talk about 60-year-olds, the people who are in power right now, about exactly how blockchain works, the majority of them just simply cannot understand it. They can't grasp it. Whenever you live in a certain world under certain conditions, and then things just change so dramatically, such as going from no internet to the internet or going from the internet to blockchain, many of the people who have spent the vast majority of their life within that one type of society, they're going to struggle to understand the overall innovation and possibility of evolution into another form of society that, say, revolves around blockchain. But whenever you start to hone down and focus and start to build in these thoughts and concepts into the people who will make up the majority of this country in 20 years, which are high schoolers, people who are up and coming with more of an ability to grasp the general idea and the overall potential of blockchain, especially Bitcoin, I think that is the best way to go, is to educate people at the foundation of our society, those who are going to be the ones who are going to spend the next 20, 30, 40 years providing us with not only just the technology, but the ideas and the innovation that will fuel this world in 2050, 2060. And if we are going to find a point in which things like this don't happen, where we're so worried about inflation and things like that, that we're taking money out of Bitcoin, which is supposed to be a hedge against inflation, it is going to come down to the education at the core and the education of people to make them understand why it can be a hedge against inflation, why it is a store of value, and exactly the potential it has going forward. So I think this is the absolute perfect news to come out during times like these to show that although we are not meeting the criteria of being a store of value or even a hedge of inflation right now, the potential in the necessary progressive steps to get to that point are happening. So I love to see this. This is absolutely amazing news in my opinion, and I think this in itself should be taken extremely seriously because this needs to be something that we see much more widespread from many other NGOs, okay? So with that said, that's going to be that's going to be the news for today. You know, since we're doing these updates every 3 to 4 days, I'm not going to do news, 6 or 7 news articles, but the most important ones for me and what I think I would want, I would want to hear, right? So now let's kind of dive into some technical analysis and let's talk about what this market's doing because it's actually a very, very interesting move happening right now. Now, what we talked about in yesterday's video is the fact that we were in this rising triangle, and I told you guys what our 3 breakdown targets off that rising triangle were. I said that if we were to break to the downside of this rising triangle, based off of these previous establishments of support, we could expect that we would find support at 29,080, 2860, 28,620, and 27,735. And what we can see is that the price first and foremost came right down to breakdown target number 1, attempted to hold it as support, lost it, came down to breakdown target number 2, and is now looking to use it as the bounce low to continue back up towards the upside. So this is, absolutely phenomenal. Just the fact that yesterday we pointed out these breakdown targets and we hit them so perfectly, these first 2 at least, it is a good sign that Bitcoin is still moving in a very healthy manner. But one thing we can see is that not only did we get these strong bounces to the upside, but we also got some opportunities for short trades with how this was all set up. Now, I actually did go in myself and open up a short trade position. I put this in my Discord. Of course, the link to my Patreon is down in the description below. But I went in on a short trade at 29,059. My breakdown target was 28,570. Leverage was 2.5x with my estimated gain at closing right around 4%. Now, what we can see is that I opened up this short trade right around here. Roughly, let's go down to the 1 hours, will be fine. As we did start to see the price, let's just get rid of this for now. As we did start to see the price working its way down, we saw the loss of our 29,059 breakdown target. Once we saw the loss of that 29,059 breakdown target, I said, okay, there's a very, very strong chance that we do start to resort back down to some of these lower levels. So I went ahead and opened up that short position. Now, what ended up happening is that we saw some bullish divergence on the smaller charts, on the smaller time frames, like the 5 and the 10 minutes. And I was like, that bullish divergence tells me we're likely going to see a retest back up probably past my entry point sometime soon here. So for that reason, I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to close this position. I think I was at a profit of like 1.5% maybe in the span of like 20 minutes. This was a $2,000 trade, so I was up somewhere around like $30. And I was like, you know what? I'm fine with this. I'm going to go ahead and close it. And what do you know? That bullish divergence plays out. We saw the retest near, within 5 minutes. So I was on the 5-minute charts here. So it had to be like 6-7 minutes after I posted that message. We saw us resort back above our entry point, and I took profits right around this level. So of course, we have been able to trade this market even during times like these, and there are still gains to be made here. You just have to be paying attention to where your breakdown targets are. So now that we've seen kind of how this thing has been playing out, we need to look forward to say, well, what happens now that we have started to see a little bit of bounce off of this breakdown target number 2? Well, as we started to see the breakdown target number 2 getting established, something that's actually been playing out is actually going to be the good old inverse head and shoulders pattern. Now, this is typically going to be aligned with a neckline, which is going to be a common point of resistance or rejection. As we can see currently, that is around this $29.3 thousand level. What that's also going to be followed by is setting of a low, a lower low, and then a higher low that is equivalent to that first low. As you can see here, that does then create your 2 shoulders and your head. Now, what gets interesting about an inverse head and shoulders is that they do have a strong chance that if they break out and hold the neckline in support, they do have a very strong chance of being at least a short-term reversal pattern. What your break up target of a inverse head and shoulders is going to be is just simply going to take the distance from your neckline, which is here, down to the bottom of your head. And you're then going to apply that distance to your neckline, to the top side, and that becomes your break up target. What we can see, very non-surprisingly, is that our break up target does currently align with right around $30,000 near perfectly, but also this bottom side support here that we had just recently lost. Remember, we lost this support and we never came back to back test it. So we very possibly could be in a position right now to use this possible bottom reversal pattern on the short term to work our way back up, to retest the bottom side support here, to see if we have enough bullish momentum to recapture it, or if we're going to get rejected and really start to capitulate back down to the low 20s or the low 27s to high $26,000 range. So what I would be watching out for at this exact moment is how do we interact with this neckline, and do we start to work our way back up for this retest? If at any point we start to see the price falling back to the downside, kind of what it is right now, be on the lookout for this neckline to hold. While we are above this right shoulder at $28.8 thousand, this inverse head and shoulders is now in play with a break up target of that top, the support level right up here, now flipped into resistance. So as long as we are above this $28.8 thousand range, do be on the lookout for us to start to work our way back up to these levels, especially while on the 1 hours, we do still have a good bit of room to the upside to work. Now, if at any given point we do fall below $28.8 thousand, whether that looks like this or whether that looks like this, do understand that our next breakdown target is very likely going to start to be interacted with, which is $27.7 thousand, which acts as breakdown target number 3 from the rising triangle that we have been tracking. So to summarize this and make it real easy, if you are looking for trades, one thing that could be a valid option, one I'm not going to take on, but it is a valid option, is going long based off of the fact that we did see this reversal pattern. We saw the complete clearing of the neckline, and now we do have a break up target back up towards 30,000. So if you do want to go long with a take profits level probably around like 29.9K, I would definitely at least set a stop loss below this right shoulder, somewhere around $28.8 thousand to prevent you from seeing losses as we do probably capitulate to this $27.7 thousand area if we do lose this right shoulder. So I would definitely not be going long right now unless I had a stop loss implemented. What I'm personally going to do is wait to see if we get rejected off of the top side here. If we get rejected off the top side here, I will then start to plan for some short trades on the way down. Or if we don't get rejected and we clear back into it, I will be doing some accumulating, as I would then expect us to retest towards the higher $31,000 to $32,000 range, which could be 8 to 10% in gains. So any way in which we break up towards here, I'm either shorting off this rejection or going long off the clearing. And if we do break to the downside of this $28.6 thousand level, you guys know I will be shorting to our next breakdown target, which is $27.7 thousand. So it's very easy. You guys know that I'm not focused on just does it go up or does it go down. I don't really care what direction it goes in. My whole goal is to set a couple game plans so that no matter what this price does, I am fully prepared to take action and to make gains, just like we did yesterday as we saw this breakdown here. Again, no matter where it goes. So last confirmation here and last summary. If we work our way back up to this key level and we get rejected, I'm going to start looking to open a short trade off of that bounce. If we clear that level, I'm going to accumulate, as at that point I am expecting 8 to 10% in gains as we come to retest the top side. If the price does start to fall at this point and lose this previous low at $28.6 thousand, I will be going short and expecting a price push down towards $27.7 thousand, and I would be on maybe about 2x leverage, which could lead to another 5 to 6% in gains there. So that's my game plan. That's what I'm doing. It's very easy and it's very simple. I don't try to do too much and I don't try to overcomplicate it. And if that is something that you guys do like, of course, you can always let me know simply by smashing that like button and subscribing to the channel if you are new. But with that being said, that is going to be about it for today's Bitcoin and overall crypto market update, and I hope you guys did enjoy. I have a Solana video coming out in probably about 3 hours, 4 hours from now, so do stay tuned for that and turn on all notifications if you don't want to miss it. But with that said, I will see you all next time. Peace.